I'm not asking you guys to make a sales pitch for a prayer corner or having an altar in your house, but just sort of your honest assessment of what has this practice meant to you.
Something more real.
Yeah.
Well, and I alluded to it earlier, realizing that the world is much bigger than, or things are much bigger than just me.
I think for me, it's kind of what I said already, is like you'll figure out that Jesus is a real person, and you can have an actual conversation with him. And like that might sound almost like I've gone insane to some people, but like no, like that's...
But that's what we're supposed to believe as Christians. Though.
Right. But like, are we engaging with him as if he is real and actually present?
Right.
Yeah.
Or are we engaging with him as if he is only a concept in our minds?
Yeah.
Right. And you just mentioned the idea of the nous, the receptive intellect. Yeah. The part of the mind or of the spirit that is receiving from God.
Yeah, so like...
Yeah, go.
I mean, I didn't quite even get to this in like my breakdown of my practice of prayer, but most of my prayer when I get into that place will consist of like, out loud. It actually is important to do things out loud. I think we've already covered that ground, why. But like out loud reciting or even singing psalms.
Yeah.
Or, there might be a few certain prayers, like the Lord's Prayer, for example, or some other prayers that, maybe saints long ago wrote down and they're just particularly good. And like that doesn't make sense unless that you understand that the goal is to open your mind, open the nous, to be receptive to God. Like to me, like that's what I'm doing. So I'm engaging in worship, this worshipful prayer, this sacrifice of prayer in order to receive from God, like to truly receive. Mm-hmm. So it's like it is this, I don't know, like nous is just the best way to describe it, this noetic prayer, this like I'm not just going through the motions for the sake of I'll go through the motions and then I've done my thing and now I'm good. It's like no, there's an actual goal, and the goal is to come to the presence of God, let God teach me, speak to me, and change me. Like feed me with himself.
Yeah.
Like he is the food that sustains your soul.
Yeah, just I was just going to say that like that receptive part of yourself is like if you have any relationship with beauty, then it comes through that. Yeah. And when I reference beauty, then I have in mind the bride of Christ. The beauty of the church is something that comes when the church receives from God, and it's something that's lost when the church is no longer receiving. So I mean, you could say like when you have that when your approach toward prayer is just get the items on the list and then systematically go through each item there, and you're not bringing this receptive spirit into the prayer, then you're not engaged with the beauty. You're not receiving from God.
Right.
That's not the bride of Christ at work.
Yeah.
There's something that goes along with being that bride that is absent in that process.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
I guess my sale pitch would though be like, don't just treat this.
Oh yeah, this will be. I'll just go ahead and ask the last question, and then you can give your sales pitch, which is just what's your advice to other people. So that
is my sales
invitation
pitch.
to
Yeah. So don't just treat this as like an interesting conversation. Do the things that we're saying, what we're talking about. It's like, what do you have to lose? Like, what's? Do you actually have a reason not to do it? Like, please just try it. Engage in it, do these things, trust the saints of God who became saints through doing these things. Do it and try it for yourself rather than trying to figure out if there's something to what we're saying. Like you'll only know through participation, through actually doing it. That's the only way you're going to know.
Okay, Aaron, you have some bits of advice?
I would say to add to what David said, yes, be willing to try something different, but also be willing to open yourself up to something to an experience that has never been part of your walk with God. Like, realize that there's more there. There is more than just, practically going through these motions that we've kind of all been used to in Western Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
And that there is really, it's a little we're not so used to the word mystical in the West, but there is a more mystical experience with Christ. There is.
Mm-hmm.
It's there to be, for us to be part of.
Mm-hmm.
I think part of what mystical means, and maybe you have your own definition, but I think part of what mystical means is you're participating in the symbols, and when you participate in the symbols, your identity is changed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Right.
It's something beyond. It's something beyond the solidity of this table or whatever you want to say, or these objects are sitting here in this room. It's something beyond that.
Yeah, it's like we could go on and on and on for another 3 hours talking about this and trying to explain.
Let's do.
Well, we could do that, and we could try to explain what we're talking about. I mean, it's just the same thing with Christianity in general. Like, I get the impression there's a lot of people that are frustrated. It's like we've been going around and around and around our whole lives for generations talking about these things and trying to figure out what's right. And it's just, you're never going to know until you step outside of your comfort zone, until you step into something. Like, if you have a sense that there's something lacking, consider trying something new that you haven't tried before. But like, you're never going to know until you do it.
I would also say, to kind of summarize what you just said there, David, stop trying to figure things out.
Yeah.
Like, that has been one of the most important things in this stuff that we've been talking about in my practice and our altars and things, is reminding myself daily to stop trying to figure things out. Yeah. Because there are things that we all face in life that we desperately would like to find answers for.
Yeah.
And when I have found myself literally battling those things and trying to find answers, I lose and lose and lose and lose and over again.
Right.
But this experience of taking myself and placing myself at the altar and letting go of all of that, letting go of all my preconceived notions and the way I think things should work, the way I think things should work out.
Right.
You can begin to see the world in a different way.
This, related to figuring things out, this has been on my mind through the whole conversation, but I haven't mentioned it, but it's like the role of the will in all of this. Because I think, in a sense, when you have the ritual practice, then you can you can let go, and you can just practice it because it's part of a ritual. You can just do the thing. When you don't have that, then your prayer life is like, okay, I'm going to be a good prayer. I'm going to do a good job at this, and I'm going to do it all the time. And I'm not going to have a ritual practice or anything, but I'm just like, through my own will and determination, I'm going to be good at this.
Yeah.
And then, weeks go by, and it's like, I just don't have a good prayer life, and I want it to be better than it is, and I just need to try harder. And it does seem to me that with the practice you're describing, you don't have to try in that same, like, muster up the will.
Yeah, right.
So that I can be like this self-directed spiritual giant.
Well, to put into practical. Sorry, David.
I was just going to say the self-directed part is like, that's the key, is you're not the one that's directing it.
Yeah.
Like, one thing I've been trying to figure out how to get at is, like, the goal is ultimately that when I come to God in prayer, there's actually nothing of myself left.
Right.
Like, it's God who's in charge.
Yeah, and to put into more maybe a little more practical terms, what you just described, John, with the will, is if someone has a certain sin that they are struggling with, don't set the goal that you are not going to commit that sin.
Yeah.
Set the goal that you are going to pray more and draw closer to God more. That is the idea. That could be more of a down-to-earth idea of how you could picture what you're actually doing there, is that you are realizing that I'm not going to change that on my own.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what
It's Christ that's going to change it.
That's what Paul's saying when he says, like, by grace you're saved through faith, not your own works.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Porphyrios was the name, but I'd come across this quote recently that you don't become a saint by fighting against evil. You become a saint by focusing on God.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, I guess my other piece of advice is look at the example of people who you can trust, people who have proven the value of their philosophy. And there's a fairly good chance it's not somebody around you right now. Like, and I don't mean that to be, you should be a jerk and you're better than everybody else around you, but just what I mean by that is it's God's saints. It's the people who died for their faith, or who changed the world through their faith. The people whose example you know that you can trust because God proved himself through them.
Yeah.
And so, like, you can look at this person and say, I can trust this guy. And so I'm going to take him at his word and follow their advice.